Mute everybody. You know.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. At the onset of this week's parsha, Bahar, Rashi quotes the famed Torah scholar, the Wein Mincha Maariv Shiur. Why did the Torah take the mitzvah of Shemitah, Shana Hashmid, and introduce it by saying it was said at Har Sinai? And the continuation of that brisa is to teach us that just as Shvit was taught to us at Har Sinai, and that it stems from Har Sinai, the revelation. So I've called a mitzvah. All the other mitzvahs of the Torah also have their origin at Har Sinai. So the question almost begs itself. So why Shemitah? If the Torah wants to say that all the mitzvahs are from Har Sinai, so let him say it by other mitzvahs. We would be able to derive and understand it that way. So the question of Mayin and Shemitah, it's Har Sinai, so to speak, is never answered. Why is Shemitah chosen out of all of the mitzvahs of the Torah to be associated with Har Sinai? So there are many types of explanations that are given to this issue. I want to just dwell on one of them. Shemitah, according to most of the commentators, is a mitzvah sichli. It's a logical mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that perhaps people would come to by themselves. Even the Torah, if the Torah would not have been given, the Gemara says there are things that we can come to on our own. Simply because we have the faculty of human thought and analysis, and we try and derive what is good for society, good for others. So we would come to mitzvahs by ourselves. Not only that, the Gemara says we would have learned from the animals. We would learn cleanliness, we would learn loyalty, we would learn all sorts of things from the animal world. That the Torah didn't have to be mitzvah us. That the Torah didn't have to command us explicitly. We could have figured it out ourselves. So the Mefarshim say that Shemitah, so to speak, is the major example of a mitzvah that we would figure out ourselves. We show Zoharetz Shabbos Hashem, all that agriculture from time immemorial knows that there has to be a rest period. You have to rotate your crops. If you keep on planting over and over and over again, eventually the soil is exhausted. It will not produce. So people would know that they have to take off a certain year not to plant crops. And then the idea that the poor, the helpless can come on the field and help themselves. So we are well accustomed to that. The government has taken that over for us. All of the societies today say that there has to be some sort of safety net of a welfare system. Can't just let people starve. And there are people who are helpless, who aren't able to help themselves. So they would be able to profit by it. So this is a mitzvah that has logic to it, so to speak. And it's a mitzvah that, without it being a mitzvah, perhaps it would be performed anyway. People would logically come to the conclusion that they should let the fields rest a year, that they should leave crops for the poor. It's logical. Well, once something becomes logical, so then we have a problem. Because then we are doing it because of the logic. We're doing it because of our human understanding of the matter. And that oftentimes does not stand the test of time. Because the nature of people is that they are not logical. The nature of people is that they don't behave rationally. The nature of people is that they are selfish. The nature of people is that they are in it for now. So don't tell me that the field won't produce 5 years from now. That's 5 years from now. For now it's producing, that's good enough for me. So logic, as important as it is, always is deficient because of the fact that it does not really deal with the human condition. The human condition is not subject to logic. I don't have to give you any examples. But today was a very sad day. I'll be logic, it could never have happened. Anybody can figure out, you can't put 50,000 people in 4 square feet of steps. But logic doesn't carry the day. So the Torah took a mitzvah that, so to speak, is based on logic, and that people respond to it logically, and a mitzvah that perhaps we could come to on our own. And the Torah said, no, it's from Har Sinai. A reason that we do it is because we were commanded Har Sinai. We can give explanations. We can make it more logical to us. We can make it more acceptable to us. But the bottom line is, it was given at Har Sinai. And therefore, Shemitah comes as the example for all of the other mitzvahs. Now, there are other mitzvahs that are obviously Har Sinai. Torah Aduma, laws of kashrus, laws of family purity, other laws that are certainly in the Har Sinai, because no logic that we can provide can buttress that law. But Shemitah is something that we're going to come to. And the Torah wants to emphasize to us that everything is from Har Sinai. And that even what you think you understand is only because the Lord commanded us. But that's really the basis of Jewish life and Jewish thought. Asher kitshonu b'mitzvoso b'tzivonu. The Lord commanded us to do this and this. We all know that In military terms, the worst of all offenses is not to obey the commands of superiors, because that leads to chaos and defeat always. And many times that the command does not make sense, so to speak, to the private who has to do the actual fighting. But we hope that the overall scheme that the general staff drew up, etc., everything makes sense. The same thing is true for how to do in comparison with Torah. And that the mitzvahs can't be seen to be isolated pieces. The Torah is a whole, it's something that is combined. One piece is dependent upon another. Can't pick and choose. And therefore, we have this example that this is the Sinai. If this is the Sinai, Lav Kol HaMitzvahs the Sinai. Then everything is from Sinai. And without getting into any sort of theology, we all recognize that that's the dividing line within the Jewish world, and certainly between the Jewish world and the non-Jewish world. Is there such a thing as tzivonim? Are we bound by mitzvahs? Is there such a command because of Sinai? And that is therefore what the Torah Kohanim emphasizes to us. Why Shemitah is associated with our Sinai. Not only to teach us about Shemitah, but to teach us about the Torah generally, and how we're supposed to view it. And that he said at Har Sinai, Naaseh v'nishma. Coming to Shavuos, Naaseh v'nishma. We're going to do it. V'nishma, and then we'll understand. But first do it. Because you may never understand. You may never want to understand. But the Torah is based upon Naaseh. We put a great deal of emphasis on Nishma, study, education, write, speak, but the basic thing is Naaseh, whether we do it or not. And that is because of Sinai. And that is therefore why the mitzvahs are dependent on Sinai. And Shemitah is the example that the Torah chose to teach us that lesson, that all of the mitzvahs are the Sinai. Hanania ben Akash, Omer, Osaka, Baruch Hu, Zakos,